What's up, YouTube? How you doing? People, today we want to talk about hijacked buildings. Now, what do you know about hijacked buildings? You see, a lot of things are happening, especially in Joburg, and it's also on the rise, I think, in Durban as well. It's like these things are happening for a reason. And you might not believe it, but there's actually a need for these things. I didn't even know that. So, yeah, let's see what we can uncover. Or let's see what I've discovered in my quest to find out about hijacked buildings. Let's go. Holla. So by now, you already know the drill. We always start with the cons. We always start with the pros, and then we get into the cons of the video, right? So let us look into this whole hijacked building situation, or crisis, should I call it, right? So hijacked buildings actually starts with the residents of the building, or sometimes it starts with a tip off from the residents of a building to people outside of the building, right? So what happens is they first notice a weakness of like repairs not happening. Then they sense that these people are in financial difficulties, the owners of the building. Another telltale sign is when they look at the failure of upkeep, you know. So it starts with repairs, failure of upkeep, and then all of a sudden a group of residents decide that they will no longer be paying for services that are not being rendered, right? And then what they do is they open a community bank account and that the residents pay their rent into that account. Now, what is the start of all this, right? It starts when building owners neglect their own buildings. When building owners move abroad or move to a different area and they don't have regular checkups on these buildings. It's like some buildings the owners can't even remember the buildings. I was shocked to learn that some owners have so many properties that they only focus on the high income generating properties and they totally neglect the low income generating properties. And the residents actually get to sense that and they know that, then they feel neglected, right? And that's how they start boycotting and rebelling against these owners, right? So it starts there. That was the root cause that I actually noticed. Okay, now that we've got that out of the way, right? Let us get into the pros of the videos. Holla. Okay, so the pros of the hijacked building crisis. One, it kind of solves the homeless crisis, right? A lot of homeless people would rather live in a hijacked building than live in a shelter because of the rules and the regulations, right? Two, it solves the high rental problems in the CBDs because a lot of people cannot afford the high rentals being offered. So they rather choose to go into these hijacked buildings because then the rent is dropped. Secondly, some of these hijacking landlords actually drop the rent of these buildings because they realize that the services are not being rendered. They themselves wouldn't pay exorbitant prices for things that they wouldn't have. So they actually drop the rent, you see? And another thing is, it's almost like a free for all. So a lot of people hate being bogged down by rules and regulations. And these hijacked buildings provide almost like a safe haven for that. It's almost like it's like encourage all this naughty. criminal behavior. Like, I don't know if I can't really say criminal, but it's like anything goes in these buildings. So it's almost like a freedom, so to speak. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but imagine living in a place where you're allowed to do whatever you want, whenever you want, however you want, with whoever you want. You see what I mean? So those are the pros that I heard of. You see, that I discovered that is another reason why people actually like or prefer living in these hijacked buildings. So I, I apart from apart from the low rental payments, or the reduced, can I say, not low, let's say reduced. Apart from the reduced rental payments, and obviously the freedom to come and go with no security access and no this and that, I personally don't see the benefit of living in a hijacked building. You know what I mean? Because yeah, maybe on the freedom, yeah, but then I don't know. I don't know if any. I don't know if that's a good thing. Really, I don't think so, man. I really just don't think so. But hey, each one to his own, right? So yeah, those are the pros that I found out to be what people like. Because they can do as they want. They can even operate businesses in there. They can, you know what I mean. So people actually generate income within these hijacked buildings. You know what I mean. So it works out for them, and they're happy. Kudos to them, right? Yeah. Now we get into the cons of the video. Holla. Yo, people, I've had a long day. I had a very long day, man. I didn't even want to be recording this late hour, but yeah, to finish the video. So finally, let's get into the cons, right, of hijacked buildings, right? So the cons of living in a hijacked building. Normally, there are no utilities, so you have to make do with what you get and what you don't have. So basically, most cases there's no electricity and there's no running water, right? So which means you've got to go out, take buckets, take bottles, take containers, you got to take tanks, I don't know, whatever it is, and you have to go to your nearest water source, which in most cases is basically rivers, fire hydrants, it's uh, taps from neighboring buildings, you know, it's from public restrooms, and you got to carry these buckets of water across over to your building, and it's yeah, it's a different type of lifestyle, man. You got to be built for it, otherwise it's not for you. Secondly, the the landlords are basically thug, mafia, gangster types. You know what I mean? So if you don't pay, you know what they do. You know what I mean? It's not as easy as, well, I want to pay you on this month and you get away with it. It's not that kind of landlord. It's a different type of landlord that you're dealing with on that level. And then thirdly, security and safety for young kids is really not a priority in these buildings. Really, it's not. Because you got to realize that you are in a danger zone, so to speak, because anything and everything goes on in these hijacked buildings because it's been allowed to. It's actually a breeding ground for whatever, you know? So that's another sad thing. Another con of living in a hijacked building is there's no accountability for anything. It's basically you on your own. There's no one you can really report to solve anything unless it's something that really concerns the landlords. Other than that, nah. Small little issues that need fixing, you gotta fix that on your own. They're not gonna come fix anything. That's on you. You know what I mean? You're paying for the space, you get the bare minimum. It's just the floor and the roof, and sometimes not even the windows. You gotta put in your own cardboard boxes and you gotta put in your own basically you're living on the streets. No, basically you're living that street life but in a building, if you get what I mean. So you are shielded from the elements basically. So the main difference is that between you and a homeless person, you are shielded from the elements. Whereas like the homeless people are not really shielded from the elements. If you're sleeping outside, I mean, outside in buildings, you're not really, besides the blanket or the tent that you'll be getting or a makeshift, that's what will try and shield you. But within a hijack building, at least you've got bricks and mortar to shield you from the elements. You know, at least you got a roof over your head. You know what I mean? Yeah, that's about it. And then earlier when I said it solves the homeless issue, I was not referring to hobos on the street. I was actually referring to people who have jobs, who have an income, you know, they can afford to pay rent. Yeah, it doesn't necessarily have to be high rents or anything like that. But it's an alternative to low income earners to live in those accommodations. So that's why I said earlier in the video, it's an it's kind of a solution, a temporary solution for homeless people. But I'm not really meaning like street vendor homeless kind of people. No, no, no. It's meaning low income people who have nowhere to go, who have jobs that are struggling to get accommodation. So that will be the alternative. Do you see what I mean? So yeah, and it's sad, but that's the reality of the corner thing. You know what I mean? So yeah, let me know what you think in the comment section below about the cons, if I hit the nail on the head or if I'm wrong on this. You know what I mean? Next, we get into the final verdict of what I think on this topic. Holla! Final verdict on the matter, right? People, hijack buildings are normally buildings that are left to decay and left in ruin, they're in a derelict state, and they're basically, what's that word called? They are condemned buildings, right? Which means that they are no longer desirable for occupation, business, private, residential, commercial, you name it, right? So, my final verdict on the matter is landlords who legitimately own buildings, need to have an active role in the upkeep of their buildings. Because what they normally do is that they outsource that role to real estate agents, right? And these agents, they don't really care. They don't come around as often as they should. They just worry that the rent is going in the account. That's all they're really worried about. They don't, I mean, you can leave your building in a clean, clear state. And I can guarantee you that if you go away just for about 6 months, and if you come back, I promise you, that real estate agent has probably been there just maybe once or twice in that 6 months. Possibly not even ever, never been there at all. You know, where we stay, it's sad, but we have a neighbor that went away for work and rented out his place. He left his house in tip top shape. When he came back after what, I think it was a year or two, something like that, I think. Oh my goodness. I don't think he could even recognize his house. He left it clean. But when he came back, it was all green with slime and mildew and mold and gosh, you name it. You know what I mean? So a lot of people, because they don't own the property, they will mistreat their property like they just don't care because it's not theirs. Do you understand what I mean? Some people who rent out buildings even sublet. You know what I mean? They even allow more tenants in. Some people even go to the extent of leasing out each room. Do you see what I mean? Some people even go to the extent of moving. Well, this is the renter, right? The people that are people that have taken on the lease from the owner. Some people moved into the balcony. They move the little stuff that they have into the balcony, close up the balcony, So the balcony, however size the balcony, maybe just fits a bed and maybe just a wardrobe or cupboard or something, and we can just put his clothes and shoes and TV on top and whatever it is. And he rents out the rest of the property. So if it's like a living room, he's going to divide it into two. He gets two different families or two different people to move into that split room. He divides it with a curtain or he divides it with some sort of a room divider or whatever it is. Then he rents out each bedroom. He rents out if there's a pet, if there's a pantry, he rents out that pantry as well. You know, the only thing you share is the kitchen and the toilet. Everything else is up for rent. So if there's any spare room, if there's any attic, if there's any underground, if there's a garage, they're gonna rent it all out. You know what I mean? And he'll just be pocketing all that rent, paying whatever needs to be paid to the landlord. The rest is his, plus the job, whatever else he does. So that's the way people make money also in Africa, right? Or in South Africa, you know what I mean? So yeah. So my verdict is yes, buildings are condemned. These hijack buildings are normally condemned buildings and they're up for demolition or renewal as they call it. But for me, yes, it's a sight for sore eyes, but I do think that it is a, an, I'd hate to say, but it's a demand that services a need for accommodation in a sad, bad way. But so, if you're desperate and you have nowhere to go, and there's a condemned building or a hijack building as you call it, that's available, and you've got a job and you can't find accommodation, or you need a quick fix, so that's the option. So, like I say, there'll always be a demand for these buildings. You know what I mean? So, for me, I think to a certain extent, they should be allowed to exist until they reach a certain point of derelict where they should then be destroyed, because then the building becomes a hazard to those occupying it and to those around it. And plus, derelict buildings do not make the city look nice at all. You understand what I mean? So there's always a yin and a yang, there's always a positive and a negative. You see what I'm saying? So unless the city or private companies come together, business and government come together, find a solution to low cost income housing problem, then I think these hijack buildings will always be an alternative accommodation for those seeking alternative accommodation. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Holla. Yeah.